ceasefires often look like endings. In April 2026, the news moved on as the global market surged and oil prices collapsed more than 13% in a single session. To the casual observer, the crisis had passed. The American president declared a total and complete victory on social media. But while the rhetoric suggested a successful conclusion, the reality on the ground in the Middle East pointed toward a far more complex stalemate. Iran's official government response clarified their position immediately. The Supreme National Security Council explicitly stated that their hands remain upon the trigger, warning that the slightest error would be met with full force. Washington assumed that its direct military intervention had successfully degraded Iranian capabilities. Instead, by committing its fleet to the Persian Gulf and its treasury to an open-ended air campaign, the United States occupied the exact position Iran's asymmetric strategy required: bogged down, overextended, and reactive. This ceasefire dismantled the three unbreakable rules that previously sustained the American-led global order. The first broken rule is the assumption that overwhelming air power can dictate a lasting geopolitical outcome. In June 2025, Israel and the United States launched the most significant preemptive strikes in modern history. Hundreds of fighter jets targeted command centers and nuclear facilities in a 12-day blitz meant to eliminate Iran's strategic threat once and for all. Iran's response relied on survival rather than confrontation. They absorbed the initial kinetic blows and avoided a head-to-head battle, choosing instead to target the world's most vulnerable economic choke points. That target was the Strait of Hormuz. By threatening to set any passing vessel ablaze, the IRGC effectively closed a waterway only 21 miles wide that handles the lifeblood of the global economy. 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply stopped moving. Brent crude peaked at $126 a barrel, causing a 30% surge in American gas prices, and leaving Gulf states staring down a humanitarian water crisis as desalination plants ran out of fuel. American military dominance failed its primary test. It could not prevent a massive global energy shock or force the collapse of the regime it was targeting. The second broken rule involves the global red line of nuclear non-proliferation. That line vanished during an unmarked Russian cargo flight over the Caspian Sea. Intelligence assessments indicate Russia transferred its most advanced strategic weapon technology to Tehran, the RS-28 Sarmat, better known by its NATO designation, the Satan II. This diagram compares the Satan II to a standard American ICBM. The Russian system carries 15 metric tons, roughly 44 times the payload capacity of a Minuteman III. That capacity allows the missile to deploy up to 15 separate warheads, each capable of executing terminal evasive maneuvers at 20 times the speed of sound. A single launch can now cover every major Israeli population center simultaneously. This capability neutralizes the Samson option, as Israel's nuclear second strike infrastructure can be destroyed before an order to retaliate can even be sent. This also bypasses the core of American homeland security. Most U.S. missile defense interceptors are positioned to engage targets approaching from the north, following traditional ballistic paths over the pole. The Satan II uses fractional orbital bombardment to approach the United States from the southern hemisphere. Washington has no interceptors positioned to engage a strike from this direction. Russia's decision to share this technology has effectively paralyzed the American deterrence model, leaving the world's largest military without a viable answer to Iranian nuclear escalation. The third broken rule is the petrodollar, the financial system that requires all global oil trade to be settled in US dollars. That system relies on the promise that America can always keep the oil flowing. While Washington spends billions on a war to maintain that promise, China has emerged as the true beneficiary of the conflict by following the strategy of winning without fighting. As Western sanctions forced Iran out of global markets, China became its only major customer, purchasing Iranian crude at heavily discounted prices to fuel its own industrial base. This shift is clearly visible in the data. More energy trade is now bypassing the dollar entirely, settling in Chinese yuan and strengthening the financial architecture of the Belt and Road Initiative. America borrowed hundreds of billions to fund its military operations, paying interest on that debt to major creditors like China. Simultaneously, by pricing Iran out of the West, Washington provided its primary rival with the cheap energy needed to expand its global infrastructure. The strategic fallout is clear. The United States is financially exhausted and trapped in a region where it no longer holds the initiative, while Israel faces a permanent and uninterceptable nuclear threat. Iran, despite taking heavy damage, emerged with its government intact and its nuclear program shielded from international oversight. They have already signaled their intent to leave the Non-Proliferation Treaty entirely. This follows a pattern seen in the Peloponnesian War, where the dominant powers of Athens and Sparta destroyed one another, while a rising Macedon watched from the sidelines, waiting to step into the vacuum. The guns are quiet for now, but the regional security architecture that once answered to Washington has been replaced by a world where energy, debt, and survival are negotiated on terms the United States can no longer dictate.